These are not my dolls, but tonight I am going to be hanging out with them. Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. My name is Melinda, and together with my husband Adine, we are Hustlin' Hooks here and over on Instagram, where we share our daily lives as resellers here on eBay and also on Poshmark. Today, I'm going to be going over how I processed that huge monster high lot that we had on a previous video. So if you haven't seen that video, there were hundreds of dolls, and it was really overwhelming when Adine brought them in. We had two huge tubs. These were all filled with dolls. So as you can imagine, it took a lot of hours. We're still not completely done with them, of going through and organizing, figuring everything out. Before I dive into my process and what made sense to us, if you're thinking about buying a big monster high lot like this, a couple things to consider. Ask yourself if you're a very detail-oriented person, if you like combing dolls' hairs, and if you like spending a lot of time doing research. It's really great for puzzlers. I love puzzles. I love getting into this. I love figuring out what goes together and creating neatness from chaos. If you hate puzzles, this may not be something that you want to dive into. If you're still thinking about it, then I'll go through what I was thinking as I basically sorted through hundreds of Monster High dolls. So before I start with step one, there were originally about 260 of these Monster High dolls. Not all of them had limbs. So before we even started separating, we made sure to take out the ones that didn't have limbs. And we also matched up limbs to parts that needed them to make them complete. That way we were working from complete sets and lotting up limb sets. After that, step one was obviously to figure out what we were working with, and that's by identifying what you have. The very first thing, the easiest low-hanging fruit, as I like to say, is pull out the very unique dolls. And I'll give you some examples. If you're sifting through a bag and you see a doll that looks like this, that's obviously very different. She doesn't even have legs. This one as well. So you can pull those out. She has wings. Those are going to be very identifiable. Whether you look them up on a site or you're just typing in search terms, they're obviously unique, and there's not a lot like them in the sets. After that, I was left with just piles of very similar dolls. So I just got them all together, and I was picking up the dolls, looking at them, and matching them. So I had piles of dolls around me. It was like 30 Frankie dolls at a time, 20 Lagunas. So that was step one. Once I had sorted them into piles and I knew, okay, so these are all Dracularas and these are all Frankies. Or not even if you don't know the names, you're looking at them, you're like, okay, these are the same, these are the same, these are the same doll. We spread them out on our dining room floor, literally in piles, and then we searched for that doll. Now there's a couple ways that you can figure out what the dolls are if you have no experience with Monster High. One is the Monster High website. You can go there, it gives you the characters. It's also really interesting because it'll give you the backstory on the characters too, which can actually come in handy if you're looking to make groups, which we'll talk about a little bit later. A few other sites are mhmerch.com and toyboxadvisor.com. I used those sites a couple times too when I was really stuck on a doll and I couldn't figure out who she was or who he was. So then I have my piles and I can look up, these are, let's go with Frankie Steins. So what I would do is I would go to eBay and I would just type in Monster High and then the character name. Obviously there's going to be a lot within those search terms. That's all right because I haven't sorted through any of them yet. So then I went to my sold comps using those search terms, and I sorted them from highest plus shipping to lowest. By searching from high to low, I could identify which dolls met our business model of having enough profit after shipping where I could pull it out and sell it as just a single doll. For example, these two actually were the first two to sell. This is Caddy Noir. She has a tail, she's black. She did well for us with our last lot as well. So I typed in Monster High Caddy Noir. And when I search and I'm scrolling down, I can see these dolls popping up near the top of those searches. So I knew these were of value. I pulled them out and I put them aside. And that's how I sorted through those individual piles, pulling out the dolls that I thought could sell for $20+ or more and leaving the rest, putting them aside so that I could lop the rest of them up later. And I basically just did that for every lot of dolls that we had separated. It was very tedious. That's something to keep in mind. You really got to give yourself a whole day to do something like that if you're working with hundreds of dolls. One thing that will make a doll more valuable is if it's a first wave Monster High doll. And that just means it's one of the first productions of that doll. One way to tell that is they have stamps. The date here is on the back of their neck. If you see, they're on the base. This one was 2011. They also will have stamps here on their lower backs there with the date. I don't know if that'll pick up, but that's one way to look as well. And 2008, I think, is the earliest. At least that's the earliest that we saw. There's, depending on the doll, it's not necessarily limited to 2008. It could be a different year, so you'd have to do your research on that doll. But if you're scrolling through the solds, you're probably going to see that doll listed as first wave over and over and over again because those do tend to sell the highest. And you can go in and you can look at the photos for that doll. You can see if they got the stamps. You can compare the face makeup, things like that will help you determine if what you have is a first wave doll or not. Other things are just unique dolls. For instance, this one that sold, this is Luna Matthews. She's just very interesting. And she's also in a really excellent condition. So she sold for $40 and we included the stand with her. Same thing, this is Nafira. I think I'm saying that right, Nafira Denial. She's in excellent condition. Her accessories are intact. Everything looks good. Her hair is not all janky. And she sold for $50. So that's one thing to consider when you're pricing your dolls is look them over. Are they dirty? Are they messy? Are they sloppy? Is everything in disrepair? That will determine the value as well. So after we pulled out all the dolls that we were comfortable selling individually for a good price, the next thing was figuring out the lots. And there's no right or wrong way to do this by any means. People are going to do it differently. There's going to be different opinions on it. I'm just going to walk you through what made sense in my head as I was putting these together. One way is to group them by, I want to say, themes. So this is, which one is, like Gloom Beach. There's certain dolls that were part of the Gloom Beach collection. And this is Skull Shores dolls. And they're not all perfect. So if you were a collector and you're looking at these aren't all perfect condition. Some are missing their shoes. Some aren't the exact doll. They're just the character. Some don't have the right swimsuit on. But it still makes sense to put them together because they're more valuable as a set than they are listing separately for, say, 10 or 15 a piece. So the buyer gets a better value. We don't have to take as many photographs individually. It combines shipping. There's a lot of different benefits to groupings. Some of these sets were sold individually as dolls, and some were actually originally sold in packages together. So this is the Lundoom set, and they were actually sold as a box set together when they originally came out. You can sell them separately, but it just makes sense to put them together in my mind. Another way to do it is by type. So we grouped these two together. These are the Serpentine sisters, and this is Kayla Marie. So they both have an aquatic theme, and I think we sold them together last time as well. It just visually makes sense. I don't really know how to say it better than that. It's just, they look like they belong in the water together. So we put them together, and maybe their prices were like $15, $20 each. But again, we get more value sending one lot out, and they get more value getting two dolls for a little bit lower than they would pay individually. Another way would be family members. So these are twin cats, and they generally come together. She's missing her leg, poor thing, and she's not complete. But again, it's just makes sense for them to come together because they're a natural set. On that same line, these are not from the same set whatsoever. These were extra wolf dolls that we had. They are a family. This is Claudine, Claudia, Howleen, and Claude. And I just took them and I paired them up, and they sold for $35 shipped. So less than $10 a doll. Could we have gotten more if we put them up individually? Probably, but it would have just been more work for us, to be honest. So we're really happy with that. Another way to do it is, are they the same wave? And that really only makes sense if it's a first wave doll. So these two dolls here, these are both first waves. This is Laguna and this is Abby Abominable, but they're both pretty incomplete as far as their accessories and their clothes. So it didn't really feel right listing them for those high first wave prices. So we just made a sale, so sorry about that, cha-ching. Anyway, so these girls I put together because they are first wave, so they do still have value as first wave dolls, not as much solo as they do together. So a collector can have first wave dolls for a little bit less, and maybe they'll buy the clothes separately then. So that sale was actually these two first waves right here. So again, even though they don't have all their accessories and all their clothes together and separately, they still have value. Don't count a doll out just because she's incomplete. Another way to group them, and this goes back to that relationship backstory, is best friends or couples. So these guys are an item, and they're actually this is a home ick set. So we put them together so they can stay in love forever, wherever they go. And then custom sets. So these two are cats. There's no reason I put them together other than they both had clothes and shoes, and they're cats. So sometimes you just, if it makes sense to group two dolls together, then you can do that. Another way that we chose to group them is by the accessories that we had. For example, this is Spectra Vandergeist. I'm probably saying that wrong. We'll go with Spectra. We'll just call her Spectra. And this is her bed. And I do have the pillow here somewhere. People sell just the bed. This isn't the doll that comes with this bed originally. But I don't know. It just, again, to me, it makes sense to include a doll of that same type with the accessory. Another one, this is Draculaura's Sweet 1600 car. There's a lot of just the cars for sale on there. I don't have the actual Sweet 1600, so this is just an extra Draculaura doll that we had and an extra Rochelle Goyle doll that we had as well, because I thought she was real cute with her clothes, but she wasn't worth $20 by herself. So that's just a couple examples of grouping. You can do it any way you want. As I was scrolling, I was sort of seeing these groups naturally form, and then I was pulling them out. I could see that they were from the same set. So whatever makes sense to you. Once I had those, I was pulling out the clothing and accessories and making sure I had them, or disclosing what I didn't have. So that was part of the puzzle piecing too, and how much time went into actually forming them. After we have the singles pulled out, after we have our lots made, there's still a bunch of these dolls left over, and we're gonna lot them up just as they are. One thing to keep in mind is even if they're missing limbs, there's still a lot of value to these dolls. They're not making them anymore. As far as we know, they're never going to start up making them. So they're only going to increase in value because it's just the same dolls being rotated through the supply and demand chain over these years. A lot of people also use them as art. They make these really beautiful, unique dolls, and they're just looking for the pieces, or they're looking for replacement parts or different outfits. There's so many reasons why people are looking for the broken dolls, the limbs. We've already sold a bag of just extra limbs that didn't fit everything for $35. So these are just extra arms, hands, things people can use to finish their dolls essentially, or make new dolls. Another thing is extra clothing. Some people are just looking for certain clothing. We're just gonna lot up all the shoes and the clothes that we have left at the end and sell those separately as well. So there's value in almost everything Monster High related. So I have spent hours with these dolls and I've had a lot of fun doing it. I really do think these dolls are awesome. I think they're fun. I love the backstory. I love all of it, but it takes a very long time. And if you are watching this from a seller point of view, you're just gonna build your knowledge the more you work with them. It's like anything else that you're selling. You're going to become more and more of an expert the more and more that you handle something. If you're watching this as a buyer or lover of Monster High, hit us up on Instagram. I actually reached out to a couple people who DM'd us based on our last video, and I offered them sort of first dibs on dolls and pulled out to see if I had certain dolls. You can also go to our store and shoot us a message on there if you're interested. And also, please share your knowledge in the comments below. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I would love to know more about these dolls for sure. We're going to link all the websites that I mentioned down below, as well as our store link if you are interested in buying any of these. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this helps you if you are in the middle of a Monster High sorting session or thinking about getting Monster High dolls. I hope you found it entertaining. If you love Monster High, let me know if those lots make sense or how most people would like to see them lotted, because I don't know. Either way, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching, and catch us on the next one. Have a great night, everybody.